I am calling the meeting of the Willits City Council of April 11th to order at 6:30 p.m. Can we do a roll? I guess we do the Pledge of Allegiance first. So just follow me. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Kathy, would you do roll call?
Yes, Councilmember Gonzalez.
Here.
Yes.
Yes.
Ornstein.
Here.
Rodriguez.
Present.
Mayor Strong.
Present. Public communications. The council welcomes participation in its meetings. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person so that everyone can be given a chance to be heard. And to expedite matters and avoid repetition, if there are many people speaking, we ask that you assign a spokesperson. The item is limited to matters under the jurisdiction of the city, which are not on the posted agenda. Public criticism of the council, commission, boards, and agencies will not be prohibited. No action is taken. Is there anybody in the public who would like to speak to us? Okay, moving on. Public matters. The first item on that is presentation on the city assistance to Willits Chamber of Commerce in bringing Mark Wilson of the West Company for a business seminar and one-on-one assistance to chamber members on May 3rd, this coming month. And did you want to comment, or should we ask Lynn?
I will go ahead and introduce, I'd like to introduce Allison Finley of the Chamber of Commerce. Allison approached me a couple weeks ago with a request that I thought was a very interesting idea. I thought it was a good idea because we have been having a lot of meetings with the downtown community regarding the relinquishment and the impact on downtown businesses. And I have heard over and over that downtown businesses are suffering. They need some help. They have been asking, what can we do? Allison said that, hey, there's this wonderful person, and she will describe more about him, named Mark Wilson, who actually has a seminar on how businesses can survive construction. And could the city help the chamber in bringing him here? And I said that sounded like a great idea. And here's Allison, and I thought it would be great if she came and spoke more about it.
Well, thank you all for having me. And I want to be clear right off the bat that West Company is the one that we were working with to bring Mark Wilson to the area. So they get all of the credit for finding him and bringing him here. And we've been working with Mary Ann Petrillo, the executive director of West Company, to make sure he can come to Willits and not just all of our surrounding areas. And one of the reasons that we really wanted to get Mark Wilson to Willits is because he founded what he called the STAMP program, which is the Small Town and Merchant program. STAMP is a comprehensive collection of workshops, hands-on initiatives, and resources designed to address the specific needs of Main Street retail and restaurant businesses. Local organizations such as Main Street programs, chambers of commerce, retail and restaurant associations, and others have had really great success working with STAMP to sponsor and deliver targeted and relevant guidance that business owners and managers can put to use immediately. And one of his strong suits is construction that small businesses face, and that is something our downtown merchants have brought up to the chamber. And we've had a meeting with Stephanie and Dusty about some of these very specific issues, and he's going to be able to give us a little bit of guidance on what we can do to best help our downtown merchants through that time, as well as a vast list of other things that he has experienced. And he comes from the Small Business Development Center in Virginia, and through that center he travels all over the United States helping small towns realize how they can get more recognition, helping their small businesses not just survive, but to thrive. And so our average business down on Main Street's down about 30%. And so we're doing everything that we can and reaching out to everyone that we can to see what we can do to help, ensure that we're giving the most help possible and helping those businesses to continue thriving, and the opportunity to have Mark Wilson come to Willits is just absolutely phenomenal. We're really, really happy to have him. So,
Thank you.
does anybody have any questions?
So it's going to be on May 3rd?
Mm-hmm.
Is it sort of an all day?
He's going to do what he calls a sunshine seminar, which is going to be from 8 to 9:30 in the morning. Following that, he's going to go around and talk to individual businesses. We're going to set up meetings with the people that he will meet with. And then after that, he would like to do what he calls a windshield drive-through, where he meets with possibly the mayor and a council member or city planner or city manager and maybe some other community stakeholders. Just drive through town up and down so he can get eyes on everything up and down Main Street and give us suggestions as far as what's worked well in other towns to pull in traffic. So, that's a great opportunity, but that's what the day will look like.
And of course, he'll actually experience at least some of the construction work going on probably by May 3rd.
Yes. Oh, that will be pretty far south of
So
it.
are there any questions or comments? Yes, Larry?
Is the city going to give them the $800 for this?
Yes.
And this is just for local chamber members?
Yeah, so we worked with Mary Ann Petrillo, and we're going to try and get a good cross-section of stakeholders, but us helping her bring him to the area, we felt like it would be a real benefit to chamber members. The seminar in the morning is open up to everybody. We want as many businesses or entrepreneurs as possible to come and benefit from him.
Whether they're members or
Yeah, doesn't matter your membership. They're going to benefit the towns or the businesses in Willits no matter what.
But if we give them $800, they can't limit it to just chamber members.
Well, I'm gonna let him speak. All right, let me just respond real quickly. So the Chamber of Commerce, we don't have an economic development department, and the chamber, we actually give the Chamber of Commerce money every year, which is some of it used just for chamber members, and that's okay. There's no any limitation to that. There's not a rule against that, because they are sort of our economic development partner, and they sort of fulfill the role of an economic development department. That said, we certainly do like to see that those services are given to everybody, and I think that and that has been voiced as a concern here, is that to make sure that these benefits are enjoyed by.
So you're saying that the morning session would be open to everybody?
Yes, everybody.
But the one-on-one consultations would probably be targeted to...
Yeah, and he has
Chamber
time
members.
for 4 to 5 meetings afterwards. So those are going to be very in-depth, one-on-one time with business members. And so the chamber and our board's point of view is that we would prefer them to be chamber members, but we are very open to the idea if someone is really struggling in town and they would like to have a one-on-one with Mark, be more than happy to make that happen.
Thank you.
Other comments? Yeah, Ron?
Yes, so he's just going to be here for the day.
He's going to be here for the day.
And the one-on-ones meetings will happen in the afternoon, I assume?
Yes. So the morning meeting's 8 to 9:30. Immediately after a short break, after that morning meeting, he will be starting those one-on-one meetings. He'll take a break for lunch, continue more one-on-one meetings, and then at the end of the day, do that windshield drive-through.
So you're looking at maybe an hour apiece for the one-on-one meetings?
Ish.
Ish?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're going to try and get as much time as we can in with him. And he brought up the possibility of doing webinars for our businesses in the future if we're interested, if we're not able to cover as many topics as we'd like while he's here. So there being some follow-through and follow-up where businesses can still come and ask him questions, and we can use him as a resource.
Sabrina and then Jerry.
I just want to remind you that I think it was either the prior council meeting or the one before that, I brought this topic before the council and mentioned that West Company had reached out asking if we were interested. It wasn't an agendized item, so we didn't have a full discussion. My concern is that the $800 that we would be allocating today is a full amount of what West Company was asking of us. So I'm concerned that us giving the $800 to chamber and then only chamber members being allowed to attend it. I mean, if we simply gave the $800 ourselves directly to West Company, then any member of the public would have, any business member would have equal opportunity to the services that are being provided by West Company to bring this gentleman here. And I just talked to Marianne Petrella today from West Company, and she stated that West Company offers a whole range of services, and she would encourage any business owner to reach out to them so that they could have an opportunity opportunity to use the one-on-one, not only with him, but other people that they have available. So I guess my question to you is, if the chamber is the one that would be hosting this, what is the advantage to the community? Is it the promoting of the event? What would benefit potentially excluding people that are not chamber members?
Well, our intention is definitely not to exclude, and I spoke with Marianne this week, and they're specifically targeting West Company members themselves. So whether chamber or not, their one-on-one encounters are in the hopes they're targeting those West Company businesses. And they're working with the Ukiah Chamber as well. The city of Ukiah covered Mark Wilson coming to Ukiah while working with West Company and the Ukiah Chamber. And our role in this is really to, like you said, market and bring in as many people as possible, since we really have that foothold into the business community. And so we're able to, through our various sources, really draw a lot of attention and pull through and working with West Company. And so, I mean, we are the Chamber of Commerce, and so we have all of those resources right at our fingertips, and we want to reach as many people as possible.
Okay, you're done. Jerry?
So I guess along the lines of the morning session and the breakout with individuals, and there'd be a limited amount, would it be your intent that you would sit in on those, so that maybe you could take in, it's one thing for the general public to kind of get the spiel, but then later on you get to hear the different stories, because I'm sure if there's a plumbing contractor, a restaurant, and a motel, they're different businesses. I wonder if you would be the clearinghouse, so that could maybe come back and maybe at Revive Ed or whatever, we'd be able to hear, maybe not specifics, but a good generalization of what the issues are.
Yeah, and that's definitely the goal, to have somebody with Mark the full day, so that we can not only get as many resources to provide to our businesses outside of those one-on-one meetings that other restaurants or retailers or anybody would really find useful, but to be able to, pull those resources and just have them available, and I'd be happy to bring those to any future meetings.
I was thinking along the same lines that if he's doing a one-on-one with a retail outfit, probably a lot of the same advice would go for other retailers, and I'm wondering if there could be some observers, well, besides yourself, of course, but taking notes, but it might even be helpful to have a few retailers with one of them being the target, so the example, or a few restaurants with one of them being the specific, just so that it gets the word to the most people who need it, and all of them need it.
I would be happy to run that by Marianne Petrillo of West Company and see if we can work that out with Mark, and maybe have, multiple business owners on the spot at the same time, or whatever it is we can work out. But either way, we'll be there to make sure we get that information out.
Is the chamber also making a contribution to this as well, or is this the 800 is the whole thing?
The 800 is the whole thing.
I think you need to be careful about opening up these one-on-ones to more than one, because there is no doubt that the conversation is going to include some private information that belongs to that business.
That's a good point.
And I think it needs to be one-on-one. Otherwise, it's just going to be a generic conversation.
So that's why I was kind of wondering that, as opposed to just one observer that could just give a generic thing.
Yeah, but the thing is, the one-on-one is supposed to be specific. The seminar is generic, is general, but these business owners are going to want to hear specific answers to specific issues that they have. And I'm pretty sure they're not going to want to share it with the rest of the community.
Okay.
Okay, so there has to be, obviously, that's good.
That makes sense.
That
Thank you.
that may not work to have observers if they're getting into, the finances of a particular business, and they don't want that all public. But I really think it's important that that information that is going to be helpful to 5 or 6 or 8 other similar businesses can be disseminated. So that's going to be your job. Any other discussion on this? Anybody from the public want to speak to this? If not, we're not actually being asked to do an action because the staff is allowed to make that decision with that amount of money without us. But I think we're supportive, so.
Great, thank you very much.
Is this going to be
Just wanna say-
advertised in the paper, excuse me?
We're gonna write a letter to the editor and work with both of the papers and get that information in there. And we just got the flyers yesterday, so those are gonna be going up and out soon as well.
Good, thank you.
And thank you all so much.
Thank you, Allison. Okay, so we're moving to the consent calendar. The items that are recommended for approval are 3 sets of minutes, February 28th, March 14th, and March 28th. Disbursement journals, a resolution for awarding a professional services contract to Primex for the wastewater treatment plant SCADA upgrade, not to exceed $56,320, and authorizing city manager to execute that contract with up to 10% amendments. And D is a resolution awarding professional services contract to LACO Associates for an amount not to exceed $85,000 to assist the city with dam inundation mapping. And that would involve also a budget amendment for the $85,000 and authorizing city manager to execute the contract. Do you want to clarify or add anything to this, or no?
I will add something that came up a couple of times, and I'm just going to clarify for item E. We are seeking a grant to actually pay for the inundation study for $85,000. That has been in the works for a while. Unfortunately, this legislation came down, and now we are at a deadline. And so we do need to contract for these services. We hope that the grant funding will actually reimburse us for any funds that we spend, or we get it before we actually expend the amounts. That would be the ideal. But we are currently in seeking a grant, and we hope that will come through. But if it doesn't, we have to do this anyway. It's required by law.
And I wanted to just ask what SCADA stands for layman's whatever it is.
It is, I know.
What SCADA is the telemetry that comes in off of the wastewater.
It measures cleanliness of the wastewater to make sure your chemicals are doing the right thing when it's treating your water. But I don't know what it stands for.
Okay.
But I know it's very.
Sounds pretty essential.
It's very important, but they have dials and things, and it makes sure that we have good water.
Well, cities having to have, cities having to have an employee go out there and actually do physical measurements. This is the 24/7 thing that's automatically transmitted.
SCADA, Wikipedia tells us,
Very good.
is supervisory control and data acquisition, is a control system architecture that uses computers, network data communications, and graphical user interfaces for high-level process supervisory management. It allows, for example, the city and brook trails to remotely monitor flows into the wastewater treatment plant.
Okay, very good. Okay.
I like it.
So if there are no comments or no items that you want to pull off of the consent calendar, and no comments from the public on the consent calendar,
I move the consent calendar.
I have a question before we get right to it. It says that there's a $20,000 transfer from Fund 501-5013-4003-001. What is that?
I would have to come back to you on that one. I don't know off
Okay.
the top of my head.
All right. I
But I
just
can
wanted
look
to
up.
know what the transfers are.
Could you say that
it's just under this, the item D
okay, would you like
or
me
C-
to?
or C.
I can email council that information tomorrow.
You can what?
I can telephone you
Thank you.
and tell you what that is tomorrow.
I mean, it's not any earth-shaking thing, but I
understand.
really am leery of transfers.
Sure.
Thank you.
But you're prepared to go ahead and act on that item anyway?
Sure.
Okay.
I just
So
wanted to know a question.
Are you seconding it?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. I guess we should do a roll call because there are so many involved, so go ahead with roll call.
Councilmember Gonzalez?
Yes.
Stransky?
Yes.
Ornstein?
Yeah.
Yes.
Armstrong?
Yes. Okay.
Could you clarify who made the motion and the second?
Chair Gonzalez made the motion and Chair Stransky seconded. Okay. Informational reports, we have the building inspection activity and the business license activity. And I don't hear any questions on those, so we'll move ahead. The right to appeal, persons who are dissatisfied with the decisions of the city council have the right to review that decision by a court under section 1094.6, and it generally limits the appeal period to 90 days, just in case you want to appeal. Commissions and agencies, we are not doing any commissions and agencies tonight. Moving it to city manager report.
No, I just need to know where they transfer the money from.
SCADA Green program.
All right. Well, today I would like to talk to you a little bit about council goals and priorities. And we have not done a council priority setting, goal setting since March of 2015. So it's been over 3 years now. And normally a goal setting process is sort of a long drawn out thing where we get a consultant, we sit around and we do lots of sessions with the public about what they're looking for and what council's looking for, and we prioritize. However, since it's been 3 years and we have a budget coming up and we have a ton of things to do, the mayor asked and that we get something on the agenda quickly so we can really look at our goals. When Mr. Peralt was here, he compiled a wonderful list of the things that are currently on the table in terms of things we just have to be done or things that are very necessary. And he did that in a memo to me, and he orally gave that to the council. I took those items, bullet point items, along with some items that I had heard from various council members as being very important to them, and compiled a list of those goals and priorities, and I've enumerated them in this report. The purpose of this session is I would very much like some feedback from council on those goals that are written down, and to be able to come back in a very quick amount of time, and I'm thinking about May 9th, having a special meeting right before our regular council meeting, say at maybe 5 or 5:30, so that we could spend a good hour and a half discussing our goals in preparation for our budget preparation. I know that everyone is aware that we have an audit going on right now. That audit will be wrapping up towards the end of April. We really don't know our financial position as to the end of the year until those audit results come out, so we haven't been able to really attack our budget yet. So we have a number of things sort of snowballing in a very short amount of time, so I'm sort of compressing our schedules. And I'm afraid that March 9th is going to be a very, very busy day for all of us, and we may have to say May 9th. I'm going backwards. Because we need to have a council report on the audit, and so that you can ask questions on how we've done in the year, and that's going to be a very interesting report. Auditors were very diligent. We had a lot of young auditors working their little hearts out for a very long time here, but I think that's gone very well. And now Celia, who is our interim finance director, has started to put a budget calendar together, but we really need to see our audit before we can work on, because we need to know how much money we have before we can sort of plan for that. So now we're doing these goals, we're sort of rolling it all up at the same time in a little bit of an abbreviated fashion, but I think it's important to do. I think it would be great if we did a more extended session, maybe later on in the year or next year, that we really take time to think about lofty goals. But right now, we really need to look at our immediate goals because we have so many things on our plate. And I'm sure that you've all read them and maybe have some comments on them, but this is sort of my time to take some notes from you on what you see as important, what didn't I catch. Anyway, and so May 9th I can come back with maybe a shorter list, and we can start prioritizing. I know that some of the things that we looked at in 2015, because I did look at the list from before, and I didn't add them to the list, because we've actually accomplished some of those, which I think is great. Main Street water line, yay, we did that, so that's great. Street paving priorities, I think that we've been working on that, which is wonderful. I know our engineering crew is working very hard on street paving and working on that. The Bechtel Road Railroad Avenue connection, from what I hear from staff and from council, that is still an item that's important. However, some of that has been relieved due to the Main Street water line. Or Main Street water line? The groundwater, I'm sorry, the groundwater. And also the rails and trails will at least help with the pedestrian access part of that, pedestrian and bike access. Cross-certification of utility operations, we already do that, and that was one of the main priorities. I know that because we have floaters going back from sewer and water, which is wonderful. Brown's Corner intersection improvements, I think that with the relinquishment, I think that has relieved, the traffic congestion there has relieved somewhat.
That won't be part of the relinquishment, though.
But in terms of the
bypass, not the.
I'm sorry, the bypass.
Yeah, slightly, but it's still an issue, I think.
It's still an issue.
There has been discussion in the past about a study for a roundabout, and Caltrans seems to be kind of lukewarm on that, not opposed to it, but there certainly needs to be something to happen at that intersection, for sure.
And I think some of it has to do with the traffic heading to the hospital and back and forth.
Right, exactly.
And slowing folks down as they come in to town.
So some traffic controls. Some of the other things that Bob had outlined, and that we're actually very close to getting a handle on. We have an excise tax on cannabis that we need to get done this year. That needs to go on the ballot. I know our city attorney has been running drafts of that by our planning department, and we're almost ready to bring that to you. We have a goal of improving the city's accessibility for the disabled. That is part of our goal. It has been before, and we're going to keep that as one of our goals. We have several community development issues that we should be looking at. One of those is a new general plan. We need to work on our general plan. We need to work on zoning. We need to prepare for the future. We have Willits is a place to be, and we have seen that in our planning department. Our planning counter has been very busy, and we need to make sure that we are ready for future development. And we do so in a smart way and in a sustainable way. So our general plan is very important. Now, a general plan takes a good 3 years to complete. So it's not something that we can just do, but it's something we need to start so that we will have one soon. And that is going to take an expenditure of probably over $300,000. So I'm just going to prepare all of you. That is definitely one of Bob's priorities. It was one of Bob's priorities. It's certainly one of mine. We shared that. And so we're going to give that to you. Hopefully that will be one of your...
Think of all the years that we've saved that money by not doing it.
Well,
for 30
there you
years.
go. There you go. Bob also outlined, and I think this is really smart, is when we looked at CIP projects, and that's basically our big brick and mortar projects, our capital improvement projects, is CIP project, is to really look at those separately and to prioritize our CIP projects and roads projects and building projects sort of separate from our other goals, because we do have separate pots of money for that. I had a number of governance issues, such as salary surveys, having an effective risk management system. I learned through REMIF that we had some heavy losses in the last year or two. I think we need to tighten up our risk management, and I think there are ways to do that. I think we can do that fairly quickly. And then there are some other goals that have not been listed, and I don't know how you feel about them, but I'm just going to throw them out there, and that is targeted economic development efforts to recruit new businesses and to support current businesses in business retention. Recreational opportunities. I know we have our rails and trails, and we had a groundswell of support for that, and maybe there are other recreational opportunities that you would like to take on as a goal. Improvement of our online presence. We are looking at a new website. That will happen this year. That is an immediate goal. So that's a short-term goal, and it's important, and it will help us in so many ways. The other thing that I added was creating cultural arts opportunities and finding sponsors or partners to add cultural events, because Willits is a town rich in cultural diversity and arts and music, and it is something that we are known for in West capitalism. So those are some of my thoughts, and I'd love to hear yours. I'm going to take notes, and we can meet on May 9th.
So I wanted to suggest that we keep it fairly brief, just adding items to have Stephanie kind of look and put them on the radar, and then each of us do homework and get written comments to her as we go, because I don't want to spend too much time here before we have a draft to work on, if that's acceptable. So more just like putting items that should be on the radar on there in a brief form. Is that okay with the council members? So we're not going to like try to set priorities right now. That's May 9th. Okay.
This is a brainstorming session. I
Okay.
think that's what we're thinking of.
Okay. So I see. Yeah, Larry.
The zoning, I think, is something that we really need to look at for a starter.
Jerry?
Along that line, obviously, 300,000 right now until we know what our budget is, and if we find out it's not as good, or maybe there may be incrementally being able to accomplish some of these tasks, looking at them, then setting up a priority within the priority as far as what we need to get done quick.
Ron?
There's a lot of stuff on this list, and every one of these things is important. The problem is, you pointed out that the 2015 plan, we did accomplish some of those things, and I don't know, but I'm guessing 3 or 4 out of a list of 20, maybe. It seems to me that our time would be better spent, we might be a little more effective as we hone this down to maybe half a dozen real important items and do them. Because, I've been through several of these planning sessions, and it gets frustrating after a while when you have all these dreams and visions and things like that. And you kind of know when you leave the room that, we just spent a couple of hours and had some donuts and had a nice time, but nothing's going to happen, And I don't know, it gets a little tiring, frankly. So I think we'd be smarter to hone down, get the list small, that's manageable, something that we can actually do. Quality, not quantity.
Katrina?
I like that idea, but I also see that as a little bit of a dream too, because I think back to our budget, when we were talking about the budget, and when it came down to it, Ron, we all had a hard time getting rid of anything, and I think when we try to hone it down to say 10, we're going to struggle. I think where I'd like to go is maybe spend a little time brainstorming on what partners could we bring into play that expands the pool of people who could work on these projects, so that we have more people that are working on, so that we can accomplish it. What other, what other agencies or volunteer groups or whatever the case may be, who else can we reach out to accomplish more of the work? And then one of the items you had that was added on later was economic development, but many of the pieces that you were already discussing are economic development in themselves. So maybe just strategizing, what are our priorities when we're talking about economic development? Is the top priority to get more businesses into town right now? Or is the top priority to get that general plan done, maybe prioritizing the economic development itself? And maybe there are partners who could help with that. I mean, we just saw the chambers here, we talked about West Company, and there's others, there's a tourism board. I think one thing that I'd like for our planner to do is at Revive Ed, we're tackling many different things, and I'd like to see some direction given to Dusty as to where we'd like him to focus his time and energy on, because I think that there's too many things going on there and we're not really getting anything truly accomplished. I think we're getting information from Dusty, but there isn't a lot that's being brought back to council, because collectively as the group, I think that we're discussing too many different things. I think we need to give him some direction as to what we want him to do. Do we want him to work on zoning, for example, or do we want you working on a billboard? Because we're spending time working on both. Those types of things.
I'd like to also, just one other item that I noticed has been on my wish list since I got elected is to look at getting a solarization at the sewage treatment plant. And I know that staff has looked at that, but I'd like to see that show up on our priorities and see where it fits in the.
What was that, Madge?
Solarizing the wastewater treatment plant. And I think that it's on my agenda anyway. I'd like to see it on our priorities. And I think that it's important to me that the defining of what the priorities are, or what the tasks are, be specific enough. So something like economic development is many things, really. So to make sure that if we identify a priority, we know exactly what it means. What is it that staff is going to do? What is it, an ordinance? Is it a capital improvement? Is it a what? So, specific.
Would it be helpful if I came back on May 9th with some broad categories like economic development, governance,
Yeah.
some other things, and some specific tasks listed under there? So
For me,
that,
it would be.
so for me, I can add specific tasks. Now, general plan is something, I'm going to stress because it's something that we can certainly prepare for. We can start putting money away for. Maybe we can at least start the ball rolling. There also may be pools of money available that could be used for that easily that we can identify.
Could we use some kind of a rating sheet where we could rate,
Yes.
as we're all discussing it, and then we could compare, and then also
You
some.
could do dots.
And then,
Do you like dots?
Yeah, and then also a space where you can talk about, like, you can do more than one project. Obviously, you can take on more than one at a time, because one may be a project that takes up a small amount of time, and another may be one that takes a larger amount of time. And then there may be partners that we could identify that we haven't thought about. So just some kind of a spreadsheet that we could all, a working plan.
I'm going to try to do that. Again, this is going to be somewhat abbreviated than past projects because it's only me. So we do not have an outside consultant, but I'm going to do what I can. And I'll promise you that. But it is going to be an abbreviated process.
So this raises a question that's been bothering me for a while. The general plan, is that required by law?
Well, I'm going to let our city planner answer that question.
I've never thought of that, but I believe by law we are required to have a general.
And there are some parts of it that are required by law to be up to date, such as the housing element.
Right.
The one thing about a general plan, and whether or not it is legally required, which I think it is.
I think so, because certain elements are certainly
Like
required.
and I believe the transportation element is also something that needs to be updated regularly. But when developers come to a city, they rely very heavily on looking at the general plan. If you do not have a general plan that is accurate or that shows the goals and priorities of Willits of 1943, they're not going to be very excited about coming here because it's hard to get financing and it's hard to get investors to know that will contribute to a project or start a project when they don't know how the city council really feels about how development will look in their city. So what a general plan does, it sort of lays out the plan. It's like the grand plan of what the council wants to do, and it gives them some surety about what will happen.
And it is required. The government code requires every city to have a general plan.
And what does the general plan as required consist of?
Well, the general plan is a comprehensive long-term plan for the development of a city, including any land outside its boundaries that the city believes is related to its planning. The general plan is at the top of the hierarchy of a local government's land use regulations, zoning, and other land use decisions must conform to the general plan.
Okay, I guess where I'm going is this. You know, I've been in government for, I don't know, 15 years or something like that. And the one thing I found, I discovered, is that governments can use a lot of words when a few will be sufficient. And the general plan, I've read several of our general plans, and there's like, you know, tons of pages, and most of it is repetitive and background and stuff that, you know, it just seems to me that a simple list, here's what we want to do, 10 pages, you know, here's what we want to do, a little brief descriptions underneath, that's our general plan.
You know, we're gonna have to follow the government code requirements on what it is. And what I'm reading here from the municipal law handbook just basically says that a general plan consists of 7 mandatory elements and any optional elements that the city chooses to adopt. And those 7 requirements are set forth in the government code, and we can't just have a 10-page
No, well,
report. We've gotta comply with
I understand that, but the 7 elements don't have to constitute 300 pages, is all I'm saying.
Okay.
Especially if none of them come to fruition. I mean, that's all, I just want to sort of take a common sense view to this thing. You know, like I said, I've been through this many times, and it gets frustrating after a while. You know, why spend the time and the effort to create these
But
grand...
it's gonna end up on a shelf and not be
Exactly.
used.
Yeah,
That's
and nobody's going to read it.
Well, it's a valid point, you know, it ought to be concise, it ought to follow the law, but be concise and readable and not be a waste.
The chairman has something he'd like to add to our discussion.
Good evening, council members, mayor. I just wanted to add something as a point of perspective. A couple of weeks ago, I had a long discussion with Chris Dart, the president of Danco Development. And what we were discussing was Danco coming to Willits and looking at various pieces of property that we have with an eye towards economic development specifically in producing housing. And they, for the most part, produce subsidized low-income housing. And what Chris told me is, because your housing element and your general plan are not up to date, we cannot get the grant money we need to do business in your town. Consequently, we don't have time to spend we don't have any time to spend on Willits, because other communities are up to date with that, do offer us the opportunities that we need, and we have to spend our time developing in those communities. So that puts it a little perspective. I'm a fan of Danco Development because I'm a fan of the type of developments that they do. And I want to tell you that the next time you guys are, if you haven't seen it, next time you guys are over in Fort Bragg, go up Cypress Drive on your way to the hospital, and there's a little group of cottages on your right. That's a Danco Development, and that's actually a group of individual homes for disabled vets. And they're little cottages, they're really cute, they're the kind of thing that we would really like in this community. And that specific project and Danco's history in Willits is what caused me to reach out to them. I was kind of stunned that we don't qualify for their help. So.
I also would like to add that I've written, I think, 4 general plans. It's been a long time since I've written general plans, but I have done that for small towns. And they were pretty simple, but they had to cover the required elements. And the idea was to do something that was usable, that would then be a guide to the zoning and a guide to the staff on what their priorities are, and not something that you spend $300,000 on and you stick on a shelf and you never look at it again. I don't want to do that. I want it to be usable. I want it to be as straightforward as possible. So I think, A, we need it, and we'd like to make sure it's really not just an exercise in producing a bunch of paper, that it's really something we can use.
We want a nimble document.
Yeah. So that is, are there other things that aren't listed yet on the potential things that will show up on this consideration on May 9th that we want to put on that table? And otherwise we can do that through conversations with Stephanie.
Feel free to email me, feel free to call me, feel free to come by and say hi with your list.
Your paintbrush.
And I will have, on May 9th, I will come armed with dots. Because that's apparently the way
I
we do it
remember
here.
we did something like that 3 years ago when we did that.
Yes.
Okay, so you have some other reports, I'm imagining.
Yes, my list. I have my list. So the city has been meeting with Caltrans. I think the last time we met, since our last council meeting, we've met with Caltrans a couple of times to coordinate construction schedules and to give updates on what was going on. We finally do have a construction schedule for Caltrans. We have learned that the work will begin on April 23rd. It is, and that we will have a community meeting and open house on the 17th. And that will be from 5:30 to 7:30. We have put that in both newspapers, and Caltrans has also put out a press release on that. We really wanted to find out when downtown is scheduled to be worked on, and they have determined that barring setbacks, the core downtown will be worked on between the end of July and October 31st. And Granite Construction is the contractor. They have several members of their construction crew who are Willits residents. They are very interested in working with us and cooperating with us. They will be going to businesses door to door to try to give them full access to information. They are going to do everything they can to alleviate the construction disruptions. There will be walkways and entrances open for business. All businesses will be open at all times. Construction updates will be available on Twitter and Nixle. The chief will give us a little talk on what Nixle is, so that we can all download that and be user-friendly on Nixle. It'll also be on our Facebook page. The Caltrans community, and the Caltrans, I think, is also putting together their own webpage. The other thing that they brought up to us that I wanted to give you a heads up on is they would like to start with a mind to try to minimize disruption to the downtown and to the businesses. They would like to start construction at 5 a.m. and end at 2. Now, this will require us to come to you with a resolution allowing that to happen. And so we're going to prepare that for the next council meeting. But what that will do is it'll put all the heavy work in early in the morning, and so we'll disrupt businesses as little as possible. But it will be noisy in the morning. So that's.
There are some residences.
There are some residents, but.
So they're going to pay the price.
Yes, Lynn.
Okay, other comments, yes, Larry.
The word has kind of gone around the business community, or at least the area that I'm acquainted with, of fixing it where they don't need to have a entrance into our businesses. And we were wondering how much faster it would go if they could just make the saw cut and start working, and not have to come up with any kind of entrances and I'm not saying, there's a business in town that close to me that is willing to open up his store, where you can come out of a parking lot through his store to other stores, or back, come off of Mendocino to a store or whatever. And I don't know if anybody has mentioned that to Caltrans, and what we're concerned with is if it would speed it up quite a bit in that area, maybe more, blocks would go ahead and do that.
I think that actually was mentioned at one of the meetings. And my understanding, and correct, I don't know if you remember this, John or Dusty, is that when they come forward to the businesses to give them notice, hey, in the next couple of weeks we're going to start this section, if that happens, they can speed up, but that will actually help.
I mean,
If a business says, hey, it's a certain season, I'm not that busy in the next 2 weeks, I'm just going to close up and go do what you want to my storefront and don't bother about entrances, that will speed up. We did hear that from them.
Well, this was keeping the business open, but just not come off of Main Street, just, come off of the,
And I think they're gonna have individual plans they're gonna have to look at each business individually, and they explain that in the meetings. And so they're gonna go through, there are certain businesses where that's possible, and they will work with the business owner to try to do that.
okay.
To try to speed it, because their main intention is to speed this. They have heard loud and clear that we want them to fly through downtown.
But do it right. Okay.
Yeah,
so-
but do it right. So again, we'll be coming through with an ordinance regarding, and the city is also going to be helping with signage, traffic and parking control. Wanted to also talk about our water flushing program. I think that we have all heard a little bit from folks in the last 2 weeks. We had a little bit of a glitch with one of our valves. This was actually not directly related to our flushing program. It was a separate issue. Water service was disrupted for a very short time. That has been corrected and will not happen again, but these sort of things happen. But we are starting the water flushing again in earnest. Individual notices went out to all water customers this week. As promised, the Main Street businesses will, that work will be done at night. It will not be done during the day. This is an intention to not disrupt business. And someone will go to their door and tell them what's going on. So we are covering all of our bases and making sure that people are notified for the water flushing. It should not affect anyone more than one day, maybe two, if they happen to be at a certain juncture of the work. But it's basically a very short time for one day that they will be affected on the water flushing.
Is their water turned off during that one day, or is it just?
No. What happens is, what I'm told, is that there can be a little bit of a brown water issue. But the water is clean. It is perfectly clean. It is just looks a little funky sometimes, but it is clean and it's safe to drink at all times.
Okay.
I wanted to give also my hats off to public works staff. We had a very big storm last weekend. It was, I believe 5 inches of rain. Our public works staff was everywhere in the city, between cutting down trees, clearing drains. They worked really hard. We got a lot of positive feedback from the public on their work, and I wanted to just say that thank you, public works staff. You're wonderful. Again, we have a lot of big items on the upcoming agendas. I may be setting some special meetings just because we have a lot to chew on in the next month or two. I know Dusty over here is very busy, and as is John. John has been working, our code enforcement has been very busy, very much with dealing with current lawsuits that we are dealing with. I can't say a lot about those lawsuits other than it is taking an inordinate amount of staff time. And so to the extent that things can be a little bit slowed down, some of that is attributable to some of the things that we're dealing with in terms of our lawsuits. But on the good news, we did receive some great applications for the Assistant Planner Code Enforcement Officer, and we are going to be hopefully making a hire soon. We're going to be setting interviews soon and hopefully hiring somebody, so that'll be great. Last thing is I will be out of the office from the 18th to the 24th. As I had notified you sometime a few months ago, I have a previous engagement and I will not be here, but the city will be in great hands. Kathy Moorhead will be our interim city manager for the 18th, 19th, and the 20th. And our police chief will be the interim city manager for the 23rd of April.
22nd.
22nd. I will be back.
Forgot the weekend.
I did forget the weekend. You'd like Sunday? Well, then you get Sunday too. And that's all for me.
I have a question. I would like to maybe get other council members' opinion on this too, but there are rumors and reports flying around about the use of the old Howard Hospital, and I'd like to have our staff find out what's going on and see if, it certainly is an important building in our community, and we want to know what's going on up there.
I would second that. I think we ought to know as a council what direction that it's taking, and to be able to have staff work on it or whatever it takes to do it, because it's a very important item.
Staff will investigate and we'll come back with a report.
Thank you.
All right, and we're now moving on to other administration reports. City Clerk,
Nothing this evening.
and Finance is not represented tonight. Human Resources not. Legal, do you have something to report?
No, I don't.
No. Okay, but you're progressing on the excise tax.
I prepared a draft and staff is reviewing it.
Good, thank you. Public safety, if you want to. Good.
Scott Warnock, Chief of Police. This week is Public Safety Dispatcher Appreciation Week. Today, Ukiah PD hosted the celebration for all dispatchers from all agencies and provided a luncheon and cake and some goodies. I really think that dispatching is a critical part of our department and most departments, and our folks are just number one. They are just wonderful, and it's a horrible job. It's a very horrible in that it's very difficult and very stressful. So along that line, we had 30 applicants for our dispatcher position. 30 applicants, and we narrowed it down to 10 because we disqualified the other 20 for various reasons. Things they weren't legally qualified based on posts, which is police officer standard training, and other reasons. So we were down to 10. 3 of the 10 did not have to take the post battery test, which is a state test that we administer. We administered that test on Tuesday. 3 of them already had the test within a reasonable amount of time from other agencies, so they're going forward to the oral interviews. We invited 7 to the test. It's a 3-hour grueling test. Some people, it's not abnormal that some people during that test walk out. But I encouraged everybody that showed up. Only 4 showed up for the test. And it takes 2 weeks for us to get the results back from the state. And I have hopes that all 4 pass. Usually I can tell by the looks on their faces while they're taking the test. So in the next couple of weeks we'll know that, and then on May 8th we're doing the oral interviews. So I was going to prepare more stats but didn't have the opportunity today to do that, and also City Council Member Ornstein expressed an interest in knowing about the overtime versus position or 2, and I will prepare that once I get those numbers. To date, we've had 3,400, to date from January 1st this year, we've had 3,400 calls for service. Those include anything from parking complaints to rapes, robberies, many child sexual assaults, and things like that. Yes, it does happen here, it happens everywhere, and it all walks of life. And on to Nixle. Nixle, although we have not sent any messages out, I'm having a slight difficulty with Nixle differentiating between the Sheriff's Department and us. For example, you can go online now to www.nixle, that's nixle.com. Larry, I mean, Mr. Stransky.
Thank you.
And you put in your zip code, and it comes up, it shows the Sheriff's Department. There is a button you can click on to go to other agencies, and then it shows us. And then you can sign up. There's a little hyperlink that's hard to find to sign up. You also, that will be the point where you don't have to sign up for it. You can go look and see what messages have been put out. Again, we've put none out because we're still gearing up on it. People can sign up for it now. You can go to that website. The city clerk is going to put it on our webpage I sent her the HTML code today to do that. Tomorrow I'm doing a web meeting with Nixle to try to straighten out the Sheriff's Department part. For mobile sign up, you can send a text message to 888-777. The text message would be the zip code 95490, and that will sign you up on your cell phone for Nixle. Again, I want to make sure tomorrow that it's not the Sheriff's Department. I understand that some of the Sheriff's Department people that have signed up on 95490 are also signed up for us automatically. So you may be signing up for both by doing that, which is not a terrible thing. Also, the city planner provided me with GIS data to provide to them for the reverse 911. So that will be in the city limits. So people who have landline phones. Any questions about any of that?
I have a different question.
Okay.
I know that officers have been really busy responding to emergencies, and I know that we're not up to the staff that you would like, but there's been an increasing number of complaints about minor traffic issues, like over in neighborhoods, people consistently running stop signs. If we don't have the manpower to issue tickets so that people get the message that it's not okay, is there another type of program that you could put in place to put out a message of, some kind of a safety message so that we can help rein some of that in? Do you have any thoughts?
I just talked to Councilperson Gonzalez, I had to look at his name, about a traffic safety committee meeting to address some of these things. I also asked my staff to look into, or to have Jim look into possible grants for traffic. We're also, along that lines, we're also looking into grants and also asking the school district to look into grants for a school resource officer.
Go ahead.
Traffic is a problem, and one of the major problems is East Commercial and Main Street for pedestrian violations. We see it all the time, and the city itself has experienced
Yes.
difficulty there. We definitely understand there's a traffic problem, and I think the only way to address that, other than when there's areas that complain about speeding, we can put the speed sign up, and that helps sometimes.
I think about most of the concerns that I'm getting are really just people in residential neighborhoods not bothering to stop at the stop sign. They just roll on through. Or if you're a pedestrian and you're crossing a crosswalk, it happens, you can stand and watch it happen over and over again, where somebody drives through the crosswalk and you're just maybe 2 feet behind you, or trying to go through it at the same time that you're actually right there. And I'm just wondering if there's any kind of proactive message that we could get out there to the community that, hey, this is a problem, maybe some kind of a neighborhood watch system, or something along that lines. Just
It's something to think about, and
Yeah.
we definitely have problem areas. We don't necessarily know about the problem areas unless somebody complains. We did know about the East Hill and the Main.
Of course.
I had a thought here.
What would be the best way for a citizen who's concerned about a specific street? Because most people don't want to just call up the business police line, because we know that officers are very busy. We don't want to take their time. Do you have is that the only way, or is there a better way?
Nixle. You can do a tip on Nixle, and that's certainly appropriate.
I have a question on that. If we observe, we being any citizen, observe somebody breaking the law, and in the case I saw recently that was very dangerous, I didn't have a chance to get the license plate number. But if I'd gotten the license plate number, would there be anything, can you do a citizen arrest or complaint or something?
Well, you would have to be there and arrest the citizen. You have to be able to ID them, not just their license number. Now, by arrest, it can be a citation, because citing somebody is actually technically an arrest. So if you were to witness it and everything was timed just right and you wanted to, we can't do it because we didn't see it. It's an infraction or a misdemeanor that wasn't committed in our presence. But if you saw it as a citizen, you can. But you have to be able, not just a license number and car, you have to be able to identify them. So if everything was in place, there was a police officer, you flagged him down, and the guy pulled over in front of the bank or something and you pointed him out, we could stop, contact him, and then you could sign the citation.
But you might have to go to court.
You definitely would have to go to court.
I wouldn't have minded, and I'm sure the pedestrian who almost got hit wouldn't have minded, but it happens too fast and the person is down the block by the time,
Right. We, several years ago, we did a pedestrian, we called it a sting. I don't like that term. But we had a person walking across an intersection, not stepping out in front of a car, but within a reasonable amount. And people not stopping, we would radio it in and stop it, and we videoed everything. And most of the people that were doing that were not seeing the pedestrians, were texting. I could see them I was standing, and I could see them texting.
well, if there's resources to ever do that, even a few times, it might be a
would be a
deterrent.
Right.
So
That's
just-
what I was thinking, just a few times as a deterrent to help get people back in a mindset where they're aware that they're running stop signs.
And I'm happy to take calls from people who want to complain about traffic stuff. I was a traffic officer. I was a traffic officer for 7 years of my career.
I just don't want to take your time. I know that the police department has a large number of calls, and I don't want to take your time. So I'm just trying to figure out what we can do without taking too much time.
I don't think there's, for the stop signs, I don't think there's any public information we can put out or anything like that. I think just the presence of police officers in those areas and maybe a few tickets. When we can never tell when we can do it because there's 2 officers on and there's 50 calls.
I guess sadly what we're asking is, could you write a few tickets?
Yes. I love writing tickets. Wait, I shouldn't have said that.
And I didn't ask. All right.
Thank you. All right, any other, yes?
Yeah,
Larry?
it's different states have different rules on the pedestrian intersections.
I think they're all pretty standard. The rule is if there's a pedestrian in the crosswalk and you, by your movement with the vehicle, cause them any delay or effect, then you're in violations 21,958, I think. Is that right, Jerry? So, for example, a lot of people think that they have to wait for the pedestrian to go completely across. If somebody is past your lane, you can proceed, even if they're still in the crosswalk, because you're not affecting their movement. Although I stay stopped sometimes, because if nobody has stopped the other direction, because that'll cause them to, oh, there's a car stop, maybe there's a reason. But if there's already a car stop,
It's just that I have noticed that I've crossed the street quite a bit in several areas in the first block there. And I've noticed that there are certain states that seem like that they just go through the intersections.
I don't, maybe I'm misunderstanding what you're
Certain
saying.
vehicles from other states?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
No, I think it's.
I think all states, I think it's universal that
They just don't
pedestrian
care
has
if
right
they
of way.
It's just an observation that I was making.
They're probably not as aware as we are in California, because in Pennsylvania, they never had this kind of, I'm sure the law was on the books, but it was never a thing. Once I came to California, that became, more part of life, You're from California, you stop at intersections, and that's the way it seems to be.
They call it a California stop to roll.
Well, there is that.
So, is that, your report's completed? Thank you very much, Mr. Bullock.
Thank you.
And now we're going to community development. Which one of you would like to go first?
Good evening,
Mayor Strong, council members, Dusty Dooley, city planner. Few things to report out on. We were successful in submitting our $6 million plus grant to the Urban Greening Program for our Rails to Trails project. I want to just quickly note all the folks that provide a letter of support. North Coast Opportunities, Walking Bike Mendocino, Mendocino Council of Governments, MCOG, Mendocino County Health and Human Services Agency, the Frank R. Howard Foundation, the Adventist Health Howard Memorial Hospital, Nuestra Alianza de Willits, Hara Senior Center for Willits, Willits Area Cyclists, Willits Kids Club, Willits Unified School District, Willits Police Department. Scott, I hope you don't mind that I signed your name. I hope that that's not illegal. Nobody reports me on Nixon. Sherwood Valley Band of Pomo Indians, Willits Youth Advocates, Willits Chamber of Commerce, North Coast Railroad Authority. That was an important one since we're building it on their property. And a special thank you to Kathy Hopper and Patty Bruder with NCO for their assistance, Neil Davis with Walking Bike Mendocino, our own Jim Robbins, who is proving to continue to prove to be an all-star, and then of course the usual suspects that make up our wonderful staff. And then certainly the city council for letting us go forth and hopefully prosper with that plan. So very much appreciate the community support that we received with that. And if we do get the grant, we have a number of opportunities for the community to participate in that design. And so if we do have a finished trail, I think it's going to reflect our wonderful community here. So I'm very excited to have submitted that. And we've got
About
our
how
fingers
long
crossed.
before we hear?
Fall.
Oh.
Yeah, we'll also be resubmitting that grant with MCOG and their alternative transportation plan. And if we do get lucky and get funded with both, we have figured out how we might even spend $12 million. So,
$12 million?
And if they, sure. That might be less realistic, but we have that contingency plan in place too. We've gotten some headway with the downtown signs. The council may remember passing a resolution requesting that Caltrans put up downtown Willits signs along the highway system. They've provided a preliminary design to me, and I'll be sharing that at the Revite Ed meeting. But it's looking like we are going to get the signs requested. So that would be downtown Willits next exit. This would be at the northbound interchange in both directions. When you get off the exit where you currently have, Willits 1 mile this way, it would also say downtown Willits 1 mile this way. And then finally, Highway 20, when you're coming to the 101 intersection, a sign saying downtown Willits this way.
Good job.
We're still on the hook for paying for those signs. I've asked for a quote from the sign contractor that works for Caltrans, and then we'll shop around and compare that with some other sign contractors or see what we can do, maybe even in-house. It might be that the signs are big enough that we could do them, but we'll explore that and try to bring costs down. Certainly any signs that we do make or have ordered need to be consistent with Caltrans regulations.
And the 101 signs are going to be at the northern interchange?
Yes, we could only pick
You
one.
can
and
only,
we
you have to
picked
go one
northern.
or the other, so that's, yeah.
And that was in that resolution that the council supported.
And Dusty, I just want to compliment you because every time that the council or the community or the Revite people come to the Revite Ed, every idea that they come forward and they say, can you spend time looking on how we can get this? We need more signage. You keep following up on it and bringing back the information, and usually something's implemented as well. And I know you have a lot on your plate, so thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Councilmember Rodriguez. Let's see here. Recently, the department's received a number of inquiries into what California Department of Fish and Wildlife's role is with discretionary projects within the city of Willits. So I just want to take a moment to discuss that in a broad sense. And by the way, discretionary permit, I'm talking about like use permits, subdivision, rezoning, stuff like that. CDFW is defined by CEQA as what's called a trustee agency. They have jurisdiction and are given the role of protecting, conserving, managing wildlife, native plants, and their habitat. So there's a number of protected animal species and plant species out there. As a trustee agency, they are the ones that help local jurisdictions determine what's required to protect those resources. So it could be requiring a botanical study or a biological study. It can include reviewing those studies when they're completed, analyzing local jurisdictions' CEQA documents to ensure that adequate mitigation is in place or adequate evaluation has occurred to ensure that their goals are being met. It's the city's obligation as the lead agency to refer those projects that could have an impact on biological resources. This happens 100% of the time in every jurisdiction in California. It's not something unique to Willits. There are projects that do come forward that we don't forward to Fish and Wildlife. An example might be you're coming in for a use permit to convert an existing building to a gym. There's no new construction required, there's no parking lots being done. Essentially, it's some interior remodeling, and the use itself requires discretionary approval from the council. That would be a project that we likely would not need to refer to Fish and Wildlife. Anything involving new construction, significant grading, it takes place in a relatively undisturbed area, it's near a creek, there's some aspect of the project that may have an impact, those will get referred to the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. They have maintained the California Natural Diversity Database that has known sites for where these rare occurrences of plants and animal species in their habitat have occurred. They'll cross-reference the project with that. Sometimes they can just simply be at their desk, look at an aerial photo. We have a project north of the high school. It's going to occur on a heavily disturbed piece of property. Fish and Wildlife came back and said no further review required. Sometimes they'll ask to do a site view before they'll make a determination, and they'll coordinate with myself typically to do that. So anyways, so it's not based on whether or not staff likes a project or doesn't like a project or who the applicant is or nothing like that. It's just simply
Routine.
what the coordination is between the two agencies for a variety of projects.
Thank you for that explanation. It's important, as you know, we've talked about it. So just to summarize, you said this is not a discretionary thing on the part of staff. It has nothing to do with the project or the applicant or anything like that. Is it state law? How would you characterize it?
Fish and Wildlife is charged by the state with protecting those biological resources. Ourselves as the lead agency, this is kind of CEQA language, we're required to do an environmental review under CEQA for a variety of projects. If that project, so yes, legally as the trustee agency, as the lead agency, we need to notify Fish and Wildlife about certain projects.
So that is a requirement. I mean, it's not the kind of thing, and again, I'm pushing this point because, it's very specific. It's not the kind of thing that you as the lead person on the project could say, it doesn't look that serious, I'll just give it a pass. What if you did that?
Well, I certainly would be frowned upon amongst my professional peers. I think if the project was challenged and they found out that staff had not even referred the project to Fish and Wildlife, I think that they would have a strong standing in court to defeat the city's decision. And we'd be left going back to the drawing board and starting over, and I wouldn't look too good.
Okay.
In the city.
Nor would the city.
Yes. Larry?
Back to the rails and trails thing. I know that's right at the start of your spiel. Have they upgraded every time that they submitted a new one? Because to do the rails to trails originally, maybe 3 or 4 years ago when we first, submitted it, it's got to be a whole lot different than today if we got it today to do the same thing. Is it upgraded automatically, or do we upgrade it, or what happens? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
The cost of the trail.
Right. Yes, this grant application was significantly updated and upgraded from the past applications. So for instance, we were able to use new Caltrans data to discuss traffic levels. we were able to fine tune the grant so it better fit the objectives of the folks that are granting the funds. We provided additional language and showed additional support for trail usership. I think upgraded the design. I think we had a little bit more realistic budget for what we're trying to do. We added security cameras to the design. So yes. As far as past efforts and what changed, I'm not aware.
Because I was amazed at the original one, we were looking at it at MCOG, and it was submitted for $3 million, and you couldn't touch that for $3 million a day. I mean, that would be, nothing. And so I just wondered, and so you answered my question. Thank you very much.
I just want to clarify that we're talking about rails with trails, or trails with rails.
Rails with trails.
Yeah, so it's not turning rails into trails. We're preserving the rails.
Correct.
Yeah. So both. Okay.
Let's see. Then just finally, we will be bringing the vacancy ordinance to you at the next meeting. I'm finalizing the final edits on the initial study for the housing element. We've got a 20-day noticing period for that project, so we'll be looking at that for the next available meeting in May. I know we've got a busy first meeting in May, so we may look to push that off into the second one. Still kind of the same issue going on with the department. We are staying very busy. I feel like I'm inching like 60, 70, 80 projects ahead, but I'm not getting that good feeling of accomplishing any one thing. So we're still failing to find uninterrupted time for me to work on my technical writing duties. And so I'm working with the city manager to look at maybe establishing office hours or something to get me that time so that we can actually get some projects in front of you for consideration. Yeah, and certainly when we get the new hire on, that's going to be an immense help.
I think that's a really good idea. When we first contracted with you, before you came on board as a staff member, you were only able to hold office hours during certain times, and I think it's perfectly reasonable as long as the public knows what those times are, and it gives you some uninterrupted time. So I like that idea. Okay.
And that concludes what I had to share with you guys.
All right. Thank you. How about John Sherman?
Again, good evening, council members. Try to be real brief. Just want to let you know that it looks like maybe tomorrow we will be mounting all the new ADA compliant signs throughout City Hall and the facility here. So as of tomorrow afternoon, and I'm hoping the delivery comes in on schedule, but as of tomorrow afternoon, if we do stay on schedule, the place will have a new look. I think you might have noticed a little bit of signage going up, but it'll be dramatic tomorrow. It looks like in about 2 weeks, we will receive the revised FEMA flood insurance rate maps. When I get that, we'll take a close look and determine how much change has been made since the last try that they made, and with that, we determine they've made a sincere effort and it looks good. We'll bring those to the council. We'll go through the same process as we did essentially the last time, where we'll have a public meeting. We'll bring the public in to take a look at the changes and discuss what it means to them.
In addition to the council meeting, of meetings.
Yeah,
specifically
a separate public meeting just to present the maps to the community. Recycling guidelines. I'm gonna prevail upon the mayor to use her connections with MSWA here. I've been getting a lot of inquiries, and quite frankly, I'm getting questions that I don't, off the top of my head, know the answers to about recycling. Now, we're challenged to meet our goals with Cal Recycle and our solid waste diversion plan, and I think if we make the guidelines clearer to our people, we'll get more efficient recycling and it'll help with those goals. But I'm getting questions like, do we rinse a can out before we put it in the recycling, and doesn't that waste more water than it's worth? Okay, so I value judgment questions that I would like MSWA or even Cal Recycle to help us determine. Other questions, like, how contaminated does paper have to be before it can't go into the paper recycling bin? Those are kind of questions I don't really have answers to, but I'm getting enough inquiries to indicate that we might really have something to gain by making that information available to the community. So I again, would like to see some connection with MSWA and see them reach out to us and give us some guidelines for the community that will help us do better on our recycling effort.
I have some comments about that, but I think I'll do it when I get to the MSWA item on the agenda, just to focus it there.
Sounds good. Bill Wilson and I will be attending an ADA training session. It's actually put on by the State of California, the Building Standards Commission, relating to the California Building Code's accessibility chapters. So, and it will address, essentially give us a chance to look at all of our facilities, just everything from the ball fields, the wastewater treatment plant to City Hall and our facilities here. So it'll be pretty in-depth training. Excuse me here. I think that's it for right now. I am getting a lot of input and calls from the general public about code enforcement issues and about properties around town that are not being maintained as well as they should, the trash buildup and things like this. And one thing I'd like to say to the public too is that this is everybody's problem. Just pointing to one particular property owner isn't necessarily the only answer here. We have properties that are impacted with trash from general use in the public. There are places in town where the wind simply blows all of the trash down one corridor, and then there's a block at the end and it builds up there. It's not really fair to single out that business owner and say you're not keeping up your property, when in fact the bulk of the problem there is coming off of Main Street or down South Street or something like that, illegal dumping and stuff. Honestly, we as a community have to take this on. It's nobody's individual responsibility. That being said, if you see a piece of property and it's simply not being maintained, let me know. I will contact that property owner and we'll talk to them about their responsibilities. That being said, we used to do 2 or 3 volunteer cleanup efforts throughout town every year. It's been over a year since we had one, other than I have to say Greta put one together for Sherwood Road, and I really want to thank people for not just depending on the city to do this. This is a community effort, and I would really appreciate it if some of the members that are concerned about this would talk to their neighbors and talk to their fellow citizens and put together some kind of program. And if they need any sort of help, call me. I'm here. But I don't really have the time to organize all of this stuff all the time right now. I've got too many things coming at me, but I think it's important for the community to address. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Public Works and Engineering, do you have? No. You've already kind of touched on it. All right.
touch on, we had I had notified council that we had what looked to be a small hole in our rear. That looks like it's correcting itself with storms, so we are not as worried as we were, and it all looks good. And likely because of the storm system, that repair, if it does need repair, will not happen until the weather clears up and it gets to be drier, so I want to worry about that.
Yeah, I wanted to just commend John Sherman and Dusty Dooley on their incredible dedication to the work you're doing, and in particular, just you mentioned the flood mapping. You did an outstanding job on that, John, and that was just really important for the community. And so both of you are really, you're appreciated, and then the public works people, especially with all the storms and all the work they're doing. I think we have an amazing staff, so I just wanted to add to what Stephanie said earlier about that. Now we're on to City Council and committee reports, and we'll just go down the list. League of Cities.
Yes, not met, but I don't know if I mentioned the last time that I had volunteered at that city meeting to be on a public safety committee meeting for the League of Cities for the Redwood Division. They have a meeting in Pomona this Friday. I won't be attending. I told them I probably wouldn't attend the ones you have to fly to, but there'll be another one later in Sacramento that I'll go to. So that's all I had to report.
Okay. MCOG.
MCOG met Monday, and we did 3 things. We looked at 5 routes for the Garcia River that floods 2 or 3 times a year, and to try to alleviate that by different routes or different bridges or whatever. And this brings the city of Point Arena and the Pomo tribe, which has a casino, and there are several items that have to all work together. And so they're trying to come up with one of the best routes out of the 5. And we read a letter from the city manager of Point Arena, and he gave us some of the items that he thought for his community that was the best item, and so that's back for study now. And so Caltrans will actually have the call on it. The next thing that we did was 101 at North State Street. They're going to redo that, and if anybody's interested, I have some photos of it, and I would be happy to share them with you. You can look at them and see if it makes any difference. They're working on the entrance and the exit to Talmadge, where the new Costco is going to go in, and that's going to be, some of that is paid for by the city of Ukiah, and some of it is paid for by, in fact, I had a thing that I showed you a meeting or 2 ago about the lanes and the stacking lanes, and that seems to be a thing that is going to really has everybody excited, or not excited, but concerned, I'll put it that way. And then the last thing was there's everybody needs to consider, there's going to be a vote on SB 1, which is the bill for streets and roads and whatever that the legislation put in, and there's a bill now to do away with it. And so MCOG is trying to spread the word that we really need to have it to upgrade all of our roads, and we just really need it in our community, and Mendocino County especially needs the road. The county and the the city and everybody. And we are one of the few people, I can't remember the exact amount, but one of the few cities in the state of California that passed a half-cent sales tax on the roads. And so we're gonna get extra money for having that. And which was before my time even. And it's just, we really need to control and see if we can put out the positive word on SB1, because it's really important to all of us.
We did already adopt that previous meeting, that our position against the
Yeah.
rescinding of SB1. Is that on the June ballot?
I don't know. I don't know if it's that or if it's in November 1.
So Larry, I saw people gathering signatures at Safeway and asking members of our community about it, and then I heard that they collected enough signatures to put it on the ballot. I don't know that for a fact. And I'm wondering, is MCOG or any other body going to be doing any kind of a community campaign to educate people on what specifically, how SB1 it has or will benefit local jurisdictions like the city of Willits and Mendocino County specifically? Not so much broadly what we get for it, but like here locally, this is how it's going to benefit you. Do you know if there's a plan?
I do not know that, but I will ask and get back to us.
I know the league is looking for examples, and that's one of
Yeah.
the things, so that if we can come forward and say, look, this was, as this progresses, they're working on their campaign.
So the league is going to put
Well,
forth something?
They'll put something statewide, but they'll probably be calling for local jurisdictions to give examples, exactly what you're talking about.
Okay, so we should have some information ready to give as an
Yeah.
example.
So we should ask our engineering staff.
Okay.
They're the ones who sort of plan the project, SB1 projects predominantly.
So if you could put that on your list of things
I
to
will-
do.
I will absolutely.
Yeah.
I wrote it down.
All right, moving along, EDFC, Economic Development and Financing Corporation, will be meeting tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock at their office in Ukiah. If anyone's interested in that, they're welcome to come to it or to ask me about it. The Solid Waste Committee, which is now going by the acronym, or the nickname of Mendo Recycle. They met on March 29th, and they're now fully staffed, and they're implementing their 3-year plan and moving ahead with quite a lot of programs that include dealing with pharmaceuticals and sharps and illegal dumping, and they're really a very positive effort. As it affects us in particular, Jerry Ward of Solid Waste was not there at that most recent meeting. He was there the previous time, and I asked Robert Carlson to follow up on having, and I can contact him directly. I want to have Jerry Ward come and speak to the council about how they're doing on implementing the contract that we have with them for solid waste. And in particular, things like what goes in which bins is great. We can have a little public information session. But another thing that Mendo Recycle has done countywide is they have a new website, and I just went to it today. It's called Mendo Recycle, much easier to find than it was before. All you need to do is Mendo Recycle, and you go right there, and there's a place for what goes in which kinds of bins, and there's also a tab for Willits in particular, what the hours are for dropping things off at the solid waste offices and so forth. So there's quite a bit of information there. And the problem that they are having, that is Solid Waste of Willits, and all of the haulers are having a problem with recycled material not being bought up anymore from China. It used to be that they could take all those newspapers and all those cans and all those bottles and actually get paid for them, which covered their cost of providing that service for free. And now it's very hard to find anybody that will even take them, let alone do it for free or pay them. they're having to pay to get the things recycled or reused, and it's a problem statewide and probably beyond, but it's definitely a problem locally. And Robert Carlson of the Mendo Recycle is going to be reporting on that. So that was their most recent meeting. We're meeting monthly, the Mendo Recycle group. So because Robert Carlson's new, he wants to make sure we're really involved on that. So there will be another meeting this coming month.
Question.
Yeah.
So since you had brought up the sharps, I was thinking a lot about how they're ending up in our trash. And so when I went to a clinic this last week, I asked at the front desk, what do patients do with their, what do you advise patients to do? And the person at the front desk said they didn't know. So I kind of looked around to see if there were any flyers and asked a few other people, and there was no advice on what to do. So my suggestion to MSWAB would be to make sure that there's something current
Yes.
in all clinics and in all veterinarian offices and things like that, so that people know what to do. There were some theories that went around in that office about what you might do, but there was no real information.
That's a really good point. I mean, if the clinic is doing the sharps, they know what to do. But if people are going home.
But if you have to
yeah.
give yourself a shot
Absolutely.
for a medical reason, or you have to give your animal a shot and you don't know what to do with it, then that's where it becomes a problem for MSWAB.
Yeah, and I didn't look that particular item up on the Mendo Recycle website, but hopefully it's there, but I think you're right. They're really wanting to be proactive, and so things like having notices in all of the clinics and all of the veterinarians about what to do with these things is important. Yes, John?
Madge, I know that the website is how modern people communicate these days. But I feel like it would be pretty valuable if I just had a handout. If I could just say, here, read this.
They have a handout because so maybe he can bring a stack of them.
And maybe we could help disseminate that information.
So that would be on all of the different categories of waste. What do you put in this bin? What do you put in that bin? And then the pharmaceuticals
A
and
little
charge.
paragraph on how to treat hypodermic needles is a really good idea. I find them on the street when trash cans get tipped over.
Yes.
And nobody wants to deal with it.
And
Yeah.
people want to dispose of them responsibly, but they don't know how.
Yeah.
So how are you supposed to deal with sharps?
There are special containers for them, and I don't know where those outlets are.
Drugstores. Most drugstores, you can actually buy a sharps container, and they're like red
Yeah.
containers, and you can just buy them and keep them on a shelf. And if you have somebody in your family or an animal that needs shots every time you're sort of done with your materials, you put it in a sharps container, and then you take your container when they're full to a location. It's just you need to know where those locations are, and sometimes hospitals take them.
On their website, the solid waste has it, MSWA has a little
Right.
thing that says these are the locations to drop them off, and they explain how they want you to.
Great, but I think it has to be not only on the website, but on the handouts.
It's got to be made public. I mean, we've been talking, I was on the MSWAP board for about 10 years, and I think this conversation has been going on at least that long, and we still have not come up with any kind of an idea or a plan that the public can use. And the last time we had a discussion on the board, they were arguing about trying to, and this was a nationwide thing, trying to get the drug companies or the pharmacies to take care of it. And I've always felt that, forget about that. MSWA has the ability to destroy these things anyway. And I asked, what is the process for this taking care of sharps? And it's not that big a deal. And it seemed to me that instead of going through all this legislative motion, trying to force other people to do something, just take care of it. Provide everybody with this box and let them throw their sharps in, and it's picked up by whoever.
Why don't we try and localize the solution and let the rest of the world come up with a solution? I mean, we keep waiting for the whole world to figure it out,
Yeah.
and consequently, we're not figuring it out on our own.
I
Exactly.
know that-
Keep
yeah.
it simple.
Let's solve our problem.
The KISS
Maybe we
the
could be
ki-
an example for somebody else
Yeah,
instead of waiting for them to solve it.
the KISS principle. Keep
Mendo
it simple.
Recycle is doing this now. They are being pragmatic and local, and they're addressing this, so I know it was perhaps frustrating. But meanwhile, there are still a lot of people that are throwing their used needles into their recycle bin or into their garbage bin, and that is a real hazard for our poor, swallow to have apparently something like 100 needles a day go on the floor when they empty the recycling bins. So we need to make it as convenient as possible, and there will still be people who will not do it, but let's get the education out there. Okay, we've got to move on. MTA.
Has not met since last.
Okay. LAFCO.
Met on April 2nd, and we had two public hearings. One was on our proposed budget for the fiscal year 2018-19. And then we had a public hearing regarding the adoption of a resolution approving a multi-district fire protection services sphere of influence. What we've done is they'd had a workshop on the various fire departments and kind of combined them all, and then ultimately did the hearing for all of them. So Little Lake Fire Protection District, Comcast Community Services, Elk Community District, Albion, Little River, South Coast Fire Protection. I kind of mention this because this is how many different fire departments we have here, not counting Leggett Valley Fire Protection District, Long Valley, Piercy Fire Protection District, Covelo Fire Protection District, Hopland Fire Protection District, Mendocino Fire Protection District, Potter Valley Community Services District, Redwood Valley, Calpella Fire District. And LAFCO worked with them, and a lot of the small departments had the same problem with cemetery districts. There's very little admin staff there, and so there was some information that was lacking, and that's something regarding the financials on some of these. Some of these they're really, money comes in, money goes out with some of these small fire departments. And it's kind of the same thing with the cemetery districts. A lot of them have some governance issues regarding not having enough folks wanting to be on their boards. So, and yeah, that was basically the discussion. But the process is they use workshops to kind of, with the board and folks show up and work these out. And obviously, they mentioned that our LAFCO director had come up and spoke with our city manager and talked about our sphere of influence projects.
How soon is Willits Sphere of Influence going to be on the agenda?
I don't think it's slated till the end of the fall. And that's largely due to us here at the city.
Actually, we've got, I spoke to someone before they do the sphere of influence. They do something called, I believe it's an MSR? Municipal Service Review. And there is somebody working on that now. I spoke to him over the phone. And that's in his hands, and he's dealing with that. So there's nothing on staff's plate as to that.
Is that a contractor though, I think?
Yes.
That's handling? Yeah.
He's in Elk Grove. And we had a conversation. He says he's working on it. He'll be asking us questions.
I called the LAFCO director today, and I'm trying to get an update on where we are. And
Yeah, some of it's going to be information we provide.
without spending any money.
Exactly, exactly. But he said he'll call us when he needs us. And
Yeah.
Okay, so it's moving along. Good. Finance Committee, I don't think we've met.
no, but I know that Celia wanted to have a meeting soon.
Okay.
She was going to call you.
Okay, so we will be having a meeting
You will be having a
probably before the
meeting
next
very
one.
soon.
Okay. Water and wastewater
Hasn't met.
has not met. Revite Ed. Who's going to report that? The date?
I don't think it's
We
met.
haven't met.
We meet on Tuesday the 24th.
Oh,
Okay.
Okay, good, that's right. The ad hoc committees.
Time out.
Oh,
The
yes.
24th, I have it written on my calendar, the 28th.
We have 24th.
So it is the 20th.
Saturday.
What?
28th is a Saturday, it's Tuesday the 24th, it was on the
Oh, yeah, I actually have it written down.
Okay, so it's the 24th. Thank you very much.
I have it written down as well. I'm going to go to it, but, okay. All right. Caltrans is meeting monthly, and I think we already heard a report on that. Quite thorough about what's going on with that. That's the ad hoc committee, but in addition to the ad hoc committee meeting with Caltrans, they are meeting with staff, so things are really moving along quickly on that. The Little Lake Fire JPA has not met. But I know that that is becoming, we need to schedule something. The mobile home park.
Almost had a meeting tonight.
What, do you want to report
Well,
on that?
I'd like to say something about that particular committee. We were tasked with putting together a meeting date, location. There was approximately 3 weeks' notice given for the meeting, and it was repeated multiple times in documented email correspondence and agreed to. And the representative for the mobile home park canceled the meeting, I believe, the day before. Was it the day before?
The tenants group.
I'm sorry, the tenants group canceled the meeting the day before.
Actually, it was the day of, I thought.
It was, yeah, it was within 24
It
hours
was within 24
of the
hours.
meeting. It was very short notice, and I think that we've done our due diligence to try and meet with the group, and I was disappointed to find out that that they were going to have a civil protest. Thank you. Protest across the street because they felt like we hadn't done our part to try and move things along. And it's hard to move things along if the tenant group isn't following through with the plan that we've put in place. So it's my hope that that we'll be able to select a new date soon.
We've created some dates and.
So far, we've put forth some dates
We haven't
that
heard from them yet.
Jerry's agreed to a date, I've agreed to a date, Stephanie and the mobile home park owner has agreed to some dates that are all in agreement, but we've not yet heard from the tenant group, so we're just waiting for them.
Hopefully next time we meet, we'll have something to report.
We hope.
Yes.
All I can say is we
hope.
really are
Yes, you're
doing our
doing your
best.
part.
I mean, I'm not involved, obviously, with the committee meetings, so, it's no skin off my nose if you want to keep pushing for it. But personally, my personal opinion is this. They had a problem, which was strictly an internal problem between them and the park owner. The city stepped up and offered to act as mediators to try to resolve this issue. And now it seems, from what I'm hearing, it's morphed into a demand for a rent control ordinance, which I don't think is on our radar. And as far as I'm concerned, that's not something that I signed up for. So I'm just wondering, if you want to continue working with them or trying to work with them, that's fine. That's up to you. But as far as I'm concerned, I would give it one more shot, and then if they don't express any interest in really working with us, then we just drop it.
I think that's going beyond the report from the committee, but I think the committee will try to see if they can get a meeting scheduled, and then it will be up to us what we want to do after that, but that's not.
We can only try to get a meeting.
It's not a discussion item tonight, what we do then. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Okay, so the JPA on the wastewater treatment facility.
May I say something about this item?
Oh, the mobile home park item?
No, the
Oh,
JPA feasibility. This is on because it relates to the settlement agreement that the city made with Brook Trails back in 2015. And there's one requirement of that agreement that's coming up soon. The parties are, by this July 1st, to work together to select and jointly retain an auditor who will audit the past 3 years of operational expenses of the plant and the flow records, and prepare a report that'll be due in December. And then the parties using that report have until July 2019 to possibly amend their existing agreement. Right now, pursuant to our agreement, Brook Trails pays a flat rate of $22,000 a month. And so this auditing of the past 3 records is going to be made to determine whether or not that's a good rate, is it high, is it low. So anyway, we have the deadline to select the jointly retained auditors coming up quickly. And I spoke with the district's council a couple of days ago, and I suggested what I think we ought to do is ask the city's auditor to work with Brook Trails auditor, and those 2 auditors agree on the selection of a neutral other auditor who will serve as both parties' retained joint auditor to do this function. And I believe the district council agrees that that's a good idea, that we should do that. And if that's consistent with your wishes, I'll pursue that and see that it gets done.
Makes sense.
And then also, in 2019, the parties are to form a committee of 2 members of this body and 2 members of the district board who will meet to discuss the feasibility of forming a JPA to consider owning and operating the treatment plant. So at some point later on, we need to designate 2 people from this committee and work with Brook Trails to set up that joint committee.
I have one question about that. If we are trying to move ahead with a solar panels
Is this a discussion?
Oh. Well, I'm just wondering how that's going to affect the audit, but we'll decide that when we get there. I think you're right. Going beyond. Okay, that sounds good, Jim. I think that's what we should do. Thank you. The other community boards and committee reports, Museum Advisory Board.
Oh, gosh, museum. Yes. Where do I begin? I'm as an appointed member to the Museum Advisory Board, I have been trying to do what I believe. I'm trying to follow the bylaws, and I'm trying to get the information that I need to advise, because the advisory board's role is to advise not only the director of the museum, but also to advise the Board of Supervisors. Can you imagine if we were sitting here and we were expected to make decisions for the city, but our city manager gave us no information about staffing, gave us no budget, we hadn't seen anything in a year, there were no warrants, I mean, we didn't even know how we were spending our money. It's a sad situation for the advisory board. We're not getting the information we need. And so we've asked Karen Horner, who is, she's given a report to the Board of Supervisors that she's spending 10% or less of her time acting as the museum director, and has led the Board of Supervisors to believe that spending less than 10% of her time is a sufficient amount of time to handle museum affairs. But yet at our last meeting, when I asked why don't we have, despite asking at a previous meeting and placing it on the agenda to discuss the budget, why don't we have even the 2017-18 Board of Supervisors approved budget, which has already been approved and put in a previous packet? Why don't we at the bare minimum have that? And she said, I don't have time. I don't have time to prepare this, I don't have time to prepare that. But yeah, the Board of Supervisors wants us to believe that going forward, less than 10% of her time is going to do the job. We can't even get basic information. So we were told that once again, it will be on the museum's next agenda. And then Karen Horner also told us that the Board of Supervisors doesn't want to hire a director, but instead what's been budgeted, approved in the prior budget that we've never seen, is a position called a Program Specialist 2. And what the director would like to do is she would like to do away with that position and create a new position called a Program Administrator, which would essentially take over some of the duties that a director would do. And she said that's something that they were thinking about. And we stated that as an advisory board, we should be hearing about this before a decision is being made on the board, to the Board of Supervisors, so that we can weigh in and advise the director on what direction they should go. And we were told, oh yes, you'll have plenty of time to weigh in on this. When in fact, when we sat in this meeting this week on Monday, it had already been agendized for Tuesday at the Board of Supervisors and was in their packet. And if you look at resolution 17081 in the packet, there is a resolution stating that they're deleting the program specialist 2 position and adding the program administrator. We were just told by 2 Board of Supervisors on Monday that we would have time to weigh in on this, and the director told us that we would have time to weigh in on this, when in fact it was untrue. And also included in the packet was the 2017-18 museum budget report, which we were told nobody had access to. And there it was in their agenda packet. Not only that, but we asked for an accounting report, like how much money in the last 6 months even, since the director has left, has been spent at the museum, because we're being told that there isn't money to be spent on the things that we would like to see done at the museum. And we were told, well, we're having trouble trying to work out the accounting system and this and that. But yet again, in the agenda packet for the Board of Supervisors is a cash accounting report. What we asked for, which we were told didn't exist, is in their packet. So, as you can imagine, I'm very, very frustrated. I've been very angry and vocal at the advisory board meetings, and there's a sense of growing mistrust among the advisory board that the Board of Supervisors is not providing us with the information that we need to advise. And it's really frustrating. I take my responsibilities serious, and I can't tell you, I think you see how frustrated I am. And can you imagine trying to do your job up here without the tools that you need? So I don't know what you can do about it as a council, other than the fact that I'll just keep reporting to you, and I suppose you'll hear about it in the paper, because I'm going to be very, very vocal. But I don't like being in this position. I don't want to be in a position where I'm on opposite sides with boards of supervisors. I've just told them that this is where the frustration comes from, so please provide me with information so that we can get on good terms. But I don't see that they're building that trust relationship. And now we have this issue where they want to create this cultural agency, and they want both the museum and the library to come together and have a conversation with them about creating a cultural agency. And I can't personally help but wonder, do they really want our input, or are they just going to do what they want anyway? The advisory board gave direction that they're not going to take a position on opposing or supporting this cultural agency, because we've not received any facts, we've not received anything to indicate the pros or cons of this. And so even though as an individual I am opposing it, as a group collectively, it's wise of us to wait until we have all the facts. Yeah, that's where that stands. Wow, yeah. I'm very worried about our museum and our community.
Maybe the board should resign, seriously.
The advisory board?
Yeah, and that might force something.
I think that
Because this has been going on for years.
Well, I think the Board of Supervisors would find that
Helpful?
to be helpful. They clearly don't want our oversight, and I am definitely the leader of stirring the pot, you might say.
I think it's counterproductive.
Right now, I am grumbling the loudest, and the more things that I point out and the louder I grumble, the more my peers on the advisory board are taking note. And I think that the Board of Supervisors is certainly feeling some more pressure or more reasons to note that the advisory board is unhappy, because In the prior year, we never saw one Board of Supervisor come to our meeting, and now we have one or two at each meeting, so that's interesting. Yeah.
All right. Well, I hope the next report will be a little bit more optimistic.
I wanted to bring you some optimism.
Okay, so the Visit Mendocino Tourism Board.
Yeah, Visit Mendocino Tourism Board. We have a meeting coming up third Wednesday of this month, 4 o'clock here. I invite members of the community or even council members if you want to come and just listen. Each board member who selected a project will be giving a 5-minute presentation on their project. We invite the press to come and hear what the exciting things we have going on. I reached out along with a few others to Richard Cooper, the interim director for the Visit Mendocino Tourism Board, and asked him for some data on TOT, and he was able to get us some information, but he suggested that this council direct the city manager to go directly to the county and cut out the Mendocino Tourism Board. He said he thought it might be more effective if we directed our city manager to get that information from the county, and he gave me contact names and numbers and all that sort of information, and felt that it would prove helpful.
So you're talking about TOT numbers from the county?
Yes. Yeah, to give them directly to you. Sometimes it's a little slower the other way around.
I have my ways.
And he gave me names and numbers.
Which you will be sending to me.
Yes, I will. I'll forward you the email.
So there's quite a few projects being proposed by your
There
board
are
members.
quite a few wonderful projects, so, yeah.
Okay. All right, so moving along. Council member reports and recommendations. I have a couple of things, but let's hear from others. Jared?
Just one quick thing, I passed this on to Stephanie, but when the whole thing of opportunity zones came up, I emailed the state and wanted to know, hey, can we get on that list? And I received an answer on the 10th that the Treasury Department has certified the governor's nomination of opportunity zones in California, and basically it's final. So, and I got an answer from Bill Schooling, Chief of Demographic Research Unit, California Department of Finance. So
We didn't make it?
what's that?
We weren't chosen?
Oh, we weren't chosen initially, so when I heard about it, apparently it was a Trump thing or a federal thing, and then so I thought, is there a way of getting on that list? And apparently, I brought it up, it came up in one of our prior meetings, Bob
Yes.
had, but I emailed the gentleman, or I emailed one of those, if you want information kind of things, and I finally got an answer probably about 2 months afterwards, or a month and a half later, so.
Anybody else? I wanted to bring two things. I met today with Mike McGuire's local representatives. Get her name down here. Taylor Morrison, and she's relatively new on the job, but she seems to be very up on what's going on in Willits and wanted to get my perspective and some things. One of the things that we touched on was the ADA compliance issues, and apparently Mike McGuire wants to make sure that the state level rules and enforcement are not onerous on people like us in our business community. And she also suggested that I contact Congressman Huffman's office, because there is some legislation in Washington, D.C. regarding this, and it hasn't been apparently moving along because only a few states are being the subject of all these lawsuits. And so those states like us that are getting these lawsuits are really motivated to clean up the enforcement and make it a little bit more something where you have a chance to make the improvements before you get hit with a lawsuit. But the other states that are experiencing this aren't interested in moving this legislation. And the civil rights kinds of groups are also not in favor of it. They want to make sure we don't water down the ADA compliance motivation, if you want to put it that way, and the regulations. So, I mean, I don't think any of us want to water down what is required to have compliance for ADA, but we want to make the enforcement more realistic and something that people can actually do without losing their business completely and spending hundreds of thousands of dollars. So anyway, I'm going to follow up on both of those at the state level, but also with Congressman Huffman's office. The other thing that we touched on, she was interested in what's going on with the mobile home park, and she's quite aware of this and the Caltrans work that's going to be underway. And so she's really got her eye on Willits, which is nice to hear. So I also asked her about the single-payer legislation that at the state level. SB 562 was co-sponsored by Mike McGuire, and it went through the Senate and it passed. It went to the Assembly and it got assigned to a special committee, which is co-chaired by Jim Wood, and that committee has just recently reported out essentially killing the single-payer bill and instead talking about a kind of a multi-payer system that's sort of like Obamacare with a public option sort of thrown in on the top, but that doesn't really make health care coverage available to everybody across the boards. It's sort of another one of these hybrid kinds of legislation that aims to keep all the insurance companies happy and doesn't really solve the problem. So I would like us, I am personally getting involved, but I would like our city council to put on the agenda next time a resolution that we urge that the Assembly move forward with dealing with this legislation and hold the appropriate hearings and try to get that on track. So I'd like to know if any other council members are willing to, I would be doing the research myself so it won't affect our city staff, to have an item on our next agenda to take a position on this. Several other cities have done so. Anybody willing to request that be on our agenda?
I guess I just want more information, so I'm open to, if you're doing the research, so that I get a bit of, I think in theory it sounds good, but I think in talking to Wood at that league event, it made it sound like it's also a money issue that comes down to how we're going to pay for it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like I would like to get free health care, but I got to figure out how we're going to pay for it, and ultimately that's got to be part of the discussion.
I've looked into the points that he raised, and I have some. So I think in order to present that kind of information, we have to have it on the agenda. So, and then we don't have to take a position, but I'd like to at
I'd
least.
be open to putting it on the agenda for the purpose of informational only. I wouldn't want to put it on as an action item because I think we need quite a bit of information. Would you be open to just at the next one making it just informational match where you distributed in a public setting the information that you collected, and then from there we talk about where to go from there with it?
Yeah, because I think that I agree with Sabrina in the sense that if we got more information to go on at a certain point, it's going to come back again. There's so much interest in this that when it comes back again, I think we're in a better position to say, hey, and I'd have a better opportunity when I talk to the folks to lead to ask.
I actually have a call. I have an email into Sarah Rounds also to ask if the league has looked into this and what other cities statewide may have weighed in on it. What I would like to do, if it's okay with council, is be prepared with a potential resolution, but we can always say, we need more information and delay action on it. But if we do feel, it's not like we have to become experts either. We're basically urging the legislators to move ahead. But I hear what you're saying. So is it acceptable if we have it as a potential action, but we can always decide to defer action? Is that okay with you or not?
Well, just because it gives the public the illusion that we might take action on it, and then they need to do their due diligence to make sure that they understand the subject matter that we're covering too. And I'm not sure that getting a board packet, I'd like to see first lots of information and then a second meeting. Sorry, but to more
And
follow up.
maybe-
I'm not closed-minded, I just want lots of information.
No, and I think, agreeing with what you're saying, because at one point, one of the doctors had shown up, thought it was on our agenda, and it wasn't. And I think if we do it as a timed item, so that we can get some of that public input, and there are local folks that can provide some, I think it's one of those things, at the end of all that, I may not be ready to vote yea or nay at that point, but I may take in some more information at that point, and especially if there's members of our local community that are prepared to offer up things, then
It's just, I think partly my motivation is that there will be people who want to speak to it, and they might feel like it's appropriate to take action at the same meeting. But if the will of the council members here is that we just have it be an information, but agendized, and so people can speak to it, I'm okay with that.
Can I clarify, so could we, and I'm going to ask the city clerk, Madam City Clerk, if we could actually agendize that as an item under council member reports and recommendations, so that you could, because, and you can bring forward the information and maybe supply it to us as an agendized item, but it would be, because I don't have the information, so it would be coming from you, but yet, so it could appear on the agenda. Is that something we can do?
And then my only concern, if we have a dozen people that want to speak to it, we might move it up on the agenda so they don't have to sit through the whole meeting, but that's an appropriate place to put it.
That makes sense.
yeah, I agree.
Okay, great, thank you. I think, anybody else have any reports on council members? Okay. There's no ordinance to be enacted, and good and welfare. Oh, I do have one thing on good and welfare, and that is that this Sunday is the talk about the monarch butterflies. And it's not only about monarch butterflies, but it's also about pollinator plants in general. And there will be some plants for people to go and plant in their backyards and learn about how we can be a pollinator-friendly town. So that's Sunday at 4 o'clock.
And where's that?
At the Willits Environmental Hub. So, okay, and if nobody else has any good and welfare, we're ready to adjourn. No closed session. I adjourn this meeting at 8:46.